It's 9:07 p.m. You're watching me live from London, UK. It is hot and sticky and sweaty here. It is not nice. I have about 4 fans on me right now trying to keep me cool. So if we're looking a bit disheveled tonight, you can't blame us because it's super hot in Virginia and it's also super hot in London. How you all doing? How's your week been? Have you had a good week? Mine's been incredibly busy, and hence why there's no promo. Normally I get the promo out and about, but not this week. There is no one. So literally I'm just going to bring in my lovely partner in crime, the lady that puts the twang into Virginia, and that is Val. Hello, love.
Hello.
How you doing?
Burning to the ground. It's so hot.
Yes, it is. And it is so hot. And tomorrow in London is going to be hotter. And then Tuesday's going to be even hotter. Yeah, it's starting to really pick up here. And it just makes sleeping miserable, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't sleep well anyway, and it just makes it worse. So.
It's kind of like both legs out, one leg in, then leg out again. So, and
yeah.
For the fur babies, it's really hard on them, and because they can't keep cool. And Vampire's over here, like with all the fans on him. As I say, welcome to Wicked Women. This is number 39, and we're talking about a really interesting subject. The one that Val and I thought was kind of interesting. One that I don't think's been covered very easily and often for the ones that I've watched recently, and that is sugar dating. Val, did you hear of sugar dating before we talked about it? Because I didn't. Sugar daddy, yes, but not sugar dating.
Well, once I looked up exactly what they called it, it's pretty much sugar daddy, sugar mama, sugar baby. Yeah. I mean, it's just what it is. And so I've heard about, I've known about it for a long time, but I didn't know it was called sugar dating.
It reminds me of having like jelly babies, like there's mom, there's baby. But we've all heard the term over the years. I mean, if we bring up the famous Anna Nicole Smith, her as an example, obviously very tragic end to her, but she was a very famous sugar baby. She was one of Hugh Hefner's ladies, I believe, in the Playboy. So we thought, well, we do a little bit of digging with this. And Val, what did you find? Tell us about what a sugar daddy is, first of all.
Oh, well, it's basically rich, well-off men who pay for their, I don't want to call them mistresses, but they pay for much younger women. They pay their bills. They buy them gifts. They, financially support them in return for pretty much whatever they want.
Mm-hmm.
And you can also say, sugar mamas are the same way. They have their sugar babies also.
It's interesting because I was looking up sugar dating, and it says sugaring or sugar dating is a interpersonal. It's an interesting word, isn't it? Interpersonal relationship where one person receives money or gifts in exchange for intimacy or companionship, either with a sugar daddy or a sugar mama. And normally they are typically older and wealthier, and the younger is called a sugar baby. Usually younger, usually very attractive and interested in improving their quality of life, receiving jewelry, goods, leisure outings, vacations, fine dining, financial support, or even mentorship, and offers social benefits such as companionship, devotion, affection, dating, or intimacy. And also, I've noticed recently on the dating websites, there seem to be quite a few dating sites that are actually going, you can now look for a sugar daddy or a sugar mama on a particular site. You know, it's like this site is absolutely, you know, for it. And I see Professor Bauer has just put
Well,
6 feet, 6
there's one actual website that says Sugar Daddy Meet.
Yeah.
And then there's Elite Singles, and there's just Sugar Daddy.
Yeah. Did you see that? Well, he just put up 6 feet, 6 inches, 6 figures, the measurement of men by women. Not all women, I have to say.
Not always, no.
In a way, it's a bit like, I can see the attraction completely, because you don't have to give your heart. You don't have to be emotionally involved. You can be spoilt rotten and taken here, there, and everywhere, and have all the good sides of a relationship without actually having any of the emotional commitment. And if you both agree to that in the beginning, and it both works for both of you, then, you know, that's fine.
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, it doesn't seem like a bad deal.
No.
If you both, you know, both parties agree to it and are mature, not underage at all. But you know, if it's a mutual thing, I don't see what's wrong.
Well, I mean, over history, obviously, like, I have to put my glasses on for this point with some of my research that I've been looking at, but over history, you can think of many ladies that have been, you know, femme fatale, and they've had sugar daddies and etc. And I was looking at one of the most famous ones over here, which was a very famous lady called Nell Gwynn. And she was a concubine, if that's the word you want to use it, of Charles II. And obviously she was, I believe she was an actress in the theatre, and he saw her, and I think she was one of his favorites. I'm just going to check here because my computer screen's gone funny, but she's well known. There's pictures of her with, like, you know, an off the gown, pretty similar, you know, with a basket of oranges. And, you know, so I think looking back, even going back a long time ago, to actually have been, even to be a man's mistress, I'm sure Henry VIII, I'm sure his mistresses actually did really well by it, because they were given gifts. They might be given a few other things as well, but they were given gifts, and they were taken care of, and they were seen to be really up the ladder. I've just found out Nell Gwynn. Here we go. She was an English actress, praised by Samuel Pepys for her comic performances as one of the first actresses on the English stage, and she became known for being a long-time mistress of King Charles II of England. And he's supposed to have worshipped her, you know, like, she was given a lot of power, a lot of recognition, but it also went against her with her career on the theatre, because, you know, they knew exactly what she was getting involved with, and they weren't very happy with some of that. And, you know, like concubines over history, I just want to use Henry VIII because obviously he's well known to have so many women.
Right.
Bessie Blount was the mother of his illegitimate son, but she was his favorite mistress, and he showered her with gifts and titles and made sure she married well. And, you know, so there is something to be said for it.
Well, it is, but I think too many times things go wrong and they don't turn out the way, you know, there's very few lucky sugar babies.
Yes.
You know, I think a lot of times they may be on top one minute and then something happens and they're the first to be, you know, cut off, or, you know, unless they have the right headspace to save everything that they get, or do something with that to improve themselves, I think too many of them just indulge in that lifestyle and, spend all their money on needless things and don't look to the future that, one day this isn't going to be happening.
I think it's, I think if you look back at some of the sugar babies who we'll talk about in a minute, and dads and mums, is that you have this image of using Anna Nicole Smith, a beautiful woman, fantastic figure, maybe a bit ditzy in character, or at least appeared to be that way. Caught the eye, whereas, and it's like, I think there is this image of that sort of sugar baby as someone who's, out for what she can get: new teeth, new hair, new boobs, lots of jewelry and power and position. And sometimes that is absolutely true. But men can also be sugar babies as well.
Sure.
And I want to bring up a particular one, Kevin Federline with Britney Spears. There's a gentleman that literally landed on his feet. He was a dancer, obviously, with Britney. And then what happened was they became lovers. And the next thing you know, they were together. And she was taking care of him. In fact, if anything, she looked after him up until the time her children got to a set age. So he was pretty much covered. I think for me, there is this reputation of you've got to be on call. You've got to look good all the time. You've got to be ready. You've got to keep them happy. You've got to be, be entertaining and fun. And, because if they have a wife or they have a girlfriend, having someone else, you can't make room for your role to go to someone else, because literally it can. If you don't please them in certain ways, it will go to someone else.
Sure. I can only imagine, they would have to, like you said, literally be on call.
Sure.
Any whim that, that their sugar daddy came up with, they would have to be right on top of that if they wanted it to continue.
Relationships are so hard these days, Val, and there are so many people that are emotionally unavailable. You go on, you meet a guy or a woman and you start dating them, and the next thing you know, you think, oh my God, this is amazing, and he's treating me really well, or she's treating me really well. And then all of a sudden they get let down. I can totally see why going into one of those relationships is absolutely a no-brainer, because I'm not going to get my heart broken. I know I'm going into it with my eyes wide open. And at the same time, he's getting something, I'm getting something, we're all happy. I think there is a trend, definitely these days, to be a less emotionally involved in some relationships.
I watched several things. I did see one, it seems like in Australia, there's a big trend for people in university. If they get to the point where they can't pay their rent, they can't do this or that, there are several places that they can go to find a sugar daddy. Sure. There's actually a man who is kind of a matchmaker type thing, and he sets up sugar baby to sugar daddy.
Yeah.
He's 48. He has a 22-year-old. She lives with him and stays with him and everything, but it's, he's just a sugar daddy. But then there's another one. It hasn't been that long ago. A 30-year-old she had known, he was, I think, 60. And they had known each other for like a decade. And they decided to kind of try romantic, try that out and, see how that would work. So they tried it out for about 3 weeks, and she kind of just decided that that wasn't for her. So she tells him, that she doesn't really want to do that it's just not for her. And he shows up in her garage and kills her.
Wow.
So I think that you have to be very careful when you think of that, that one is not getting emotionally attached and the other one, is not for that. I think you have to make sure that both are on the equal level as far as the relationship goes.
It reminds me a bit of the Christian Grey bit in 50 Shades of Grey.
Never seen
it. Have you ever read the book? So Christian Grey is this very rich young businessman who doesn't do love, doesn't do relationships, but basically wants someone to maybe accompany him in doing something. And obviously sex is involved, but obviously it's a more S&M kind of, relationship. But it reminds me where they had a contract, an agreement that she had to sign to. You will do this, you'll go on the pill, you will have sexual health checks, this is what I'm going to do, blah, blah, blah. It reminds me of that. And it also reminds me of the film Pretty Woman in some ways as well, with Julia Roberts and Richard Gere, where, she's a prostitute, but she turns into the woman that he loves, but also he showers her with everything. And it seems that and also I'm going back a long way now, but is it Mrs. Mrs. Robinson, who had the affair with the younger guy? I can see the attraction of dating an older man and an older woman. And I can see both camps of that, because you get experience. You get someone who's been there, done it, takes it off, knows what they want, knows what they don't want, won't take any crap. And also they might be more financially solid, so you don't have to worry about things like that.
Right.
I sit on the fence with this one, because I actually see the benefits sometimes, because having had relationships and hurt, actually to actually meet someone and not have that. I'm not saying for everyone, I'm not saying for me, but I can see.
But let me ask you a question. Can you see can you see it as elegant prostitution?
Good point. I don't see it as prostitution. I see it as a contract. It's a business, in a way, a business contract.
Right.
Because you're agreeing to it, right?
But see, if you get down to the skeleton of it, someone is paying you with either gifts, money, paying your bills, whatever, for intimacy.
Yeah.
So it's pretty much high scale prostitution on a long term.
You could look at it that way. That is one way of looking at it. You can also look at it as I say, like a contract. You both know it. You're going in with your eyes wide open. I mean, let's be honest. It's like sugar relationships come in many different forms. It can be like just spending time together, meeting just to have sex, spending the entire day and night together, right?
Well, I do know. I have seen a lot of the relationship between them is the man just wants someone as a companion, not necessarily down and dirty, not necessarily to go have fun with or whatever, just as a companion. and there's no sex involved. There's no, intimacy. It's just they want a beautiful woman as a companion.
Mm.
And then I've
Isn't
seen
that,
others that are just
isn't that escort?
pretty much,
Is that like an escort?
not necessarily, because at the end of the night, they don't like go home, or they don't
Mm.
stay for a couple hours. You pay them by the hour and they go home. This is
Mm.
more, a rich old man that lives alone or whatever, and it's almost like a nursemaid.
Yes, yes. The companionship, and obviously it can absolutely. I mean, every contract, if I use that word, between
Yeah.
being in that kind of relationship, how many times do you see them? What's the emotional investment? Are you exclusive? Are you not sleeping with
Right.
anyone else? If you're sleeping together, how much communication are you going to do? And also allowances. Like, I'm going to give you this much money a
Yeah.
month, and this and then also, is it an open relationship, or is it the fact that you can go and be with anyone you want, and obviously lovely trips away, being taken across the world. You have
Yeah.
to decide whether or not you have to use a condom. Make sure that you've got your sexual health checks done, because all
Sure.
these things come into it. And also discretion. Sometimes people want these kind of relationships, and it's like, shh, it's very, very
Sure.
we're not allowed to tell anyone, because if we do tell someone, it's a big thing, isn't it, to say, I'm seeing this person, we're not in a relationship, but we spend time together, we have sex, we're having a great relationship. And there is something very attractive about the older woman or man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not one to ask, but it's I think for a younger, I'm going to say a younger woman, because that's just, my from my point of view, it's something very, very attractive about an older man who has his shit together,
Yes.
and does not demand you to change, doesn't really demand anything from you.
Mm-hmm.
Just be you, you know. Um, and I think in a lot of cases, the man may see someone struggling and want to help them, and I think that could be construed as, sugar daddy or sugar mama, because they may, invest in them. And I think that's happened a lot, especially like music business and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
The older the exec, kind of in in invests in the troubled,
So almost
younger
like,
person.
that's the mentorish side of it, isn't it? It's almost
Right.
like being a mentor, helping them,
Exactly.
guiding them. But I mean, let's look at Madonna, using her as an example. Madonna has dated a lot of young guys, and Cher being another one. These women have dated incredibly young, good-looking guys,
Yeah.
and including Lenny Kravitz, Sean Penn, and obviously she married Guy Ritchie. And also she believes that, she threw out the dating book and was like, she's dated a 26-year-old personal trainer, a 25-year-old French dancer, a 22-year-old Brazilian DJ. And I actually wonder, like, is it now we're getting older, we want to meet a guy who's actually younger, has more energy, takes care of himself, looks good, takes care of his body, is going to look at you and sort of respect you, and because of the difference, you know. I actually date. I'm going to bring this up. My best friend actually told me to. She said, "When do you need to go out on a date with a younger man?" I was like, "No, I can't do this." She was like, "You need to do it. Every woman needs to do it." So I actually went out on this date with this younger guy. He was 25 at the time. And he had money, so he wasn't like he was looking at me for anything like that. But we went out, and he's a lovely guy, got on incredibly well. And he wanted to see me again. It was the time of COVID, so you couldn't actually get, like, you know, you weren't supposed to get too close or anything. And there was one thing that put me off. It was when we were talking about music, and literally, he was saying about, oh, I love this song, you know, it's just come around. And I was like, hang on a minute, I remember it the first time. And it made me feel like, hang on a minute, I'm not sure about that. But then from another point of view, if you go onto the dating sites, and I'm being completely honest here, because we are all attracted. This is the first thing we see in a person, right? It is physical attraction. We have to have chemistry and physical connection with someone. You have to fancy somebody. Many men our age, they haven't taken care of themselves. They've lost their hair, they've got a belly, they've got 3 chins. There's pictures of them on the dating site with a fish or something else, and you just think to yourself, really?
That really bothers you, doesn't it?
Yeah, the fish, you know, because I'm not into the whole fishing thing of it, but you know, they've got their fingers in the poor fish's side of the face, and the fish is like that.
You bring that up with dating sites all the time. It's like the fish. The fish.
I don't mind anything else. Just leave the fish in the goddamn water. Because, you know, as we learned this week, fish feel 22 minutes of pain when they're out of the water. But you know, they do. And you just think, oh God, is that really our pittance? What we've got, because I'm sorry, but you've got to take care of yourself. I mean, we all put weight on, we all age, we all lose weight, our hair changes or whatever, but make an effort, look good, smell nice, you know, dress nice, be you know, take the lady or the go out with a guy somewhere lovely. And I can see why some of the ladies and men go with these kind of relationships, because they're not having to deal with what the rest of us women are dealing with.
Well, I mean, I think when you're dating at our age, you kind of have a different goal in mind.
Yeah.
Than, say, a 22, 23-year-old.
Sure.
They are kind of dating either for fun or for profit.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the goal of being with someone forever.
Yep.
The men that are, you know, older, have money, I think they are going for kind of the same thing that the 20-something-year-olds is, because they've lived their life. They've been through all that. They've more than likely either been married or are married.
Sure.
They're not looking for that. They're looking for, you know, fun. Someone to spend time with that's either not necessarily replacing their wife that is not there anymore, but, you know, that companionship without them demanding something more.
Also, I think as well, when we're talking about attraction and stuff like that, when on some of the dating sites, you'll see a young guy and he's put his age as 43, 48 or 50. And I don't know about the ladies. I don't know about that, if they do that, because I don't see them. But it's like, and they'll say, I know I'm not that age, but I really want to meet an older woman because I prefer the company of older women. And you just go, oh, okay. But you also go into that thing then of when you're going out on a date and all your friends mix together. you know, my nephew said to me, Wendy, I don't care Auntie Wendy, I don't care who you date, just as long as they're older than me. Because, you know, it gets bad. You know, like the 25-year-old I went out for a date with, he was like, he's younger than me. You can't do that.
Well, I think there is a certain point you get to, and they're talking about something, and you're like, yeah, I remember before that, you know.
Yeah.
But I think you have to weigh what you do have in common. And then, you know, there's always going to be that certain gender gap, not necessarily gender, but, you know, that age gap there.
Yeah.
That, you know, they're talking about, you know, the PS5, and I played the Atari. So, you know, it's kind of, you kind of have to weigh your, you know, downsides.
I think there's also
if you're willing.
That when a younger person, you know, when someone who's younger than you is interested in you, you think to yourself, why? What are you after? What is it
You automatically think they think I've got money.
Well, exactly, you know, and if they start asking you, like, so what car do you drive? And
yeah,
you know, some people just ask you that out of interest. I just want to have a quick look at Anna Nicole Smith, because she's a lady that people remember who married a very elderly guy.
Yeah.
She was 24 when she met J. Howard Marshall, who was 86 at the time. And they had a 4-year relationship together, and including marriage, which I'm sure his family had heart attack over. And he showered her with extravagant gifts and the encouragement to pursue her modeling career. So kind of like the mentorship, father figure, companionship going on there.
But she really loved him.
She did.
I mean,
he was like that father figure.
Right. And of course her family, you know, she got almost nothing.
Yes, because they made it difficult for her, didn't they? To actually do it. And I mean, let's look at Hugh Hefner. There's another one. Has had so many sugar babies. The Playboy Mansion. One day I'm interested to do a show about the tunnels and everything that go underneath all the homes to the Playboy Mansion.
Right.
It's very interesting, even though the Playboy Mansion is no longer, because obviously he's gone and etc. I can't imagine how many women, sugar women, and they all look the same. They were all blonde, skinny, big boobs, etc. He had a type.
Well, they had things that they had to have before they could be a Playboy bunny. That's why they all look alike, because you had to have a certain size waist. You know, you had to have. It was but it wasn't all what everybody thinks. It was very dark.
Yes, and here's another lady who eventually was in a dark relationship, was Mariah Carey. Mariah Carey, obviously, she was born with a beautiful voice, and she married Tommy Mottola. And they were only she was 17 when they first got together.
Her manager, correct?
Yeah, and she married him at 23. He was 43. And even though he helped her get her career going, he had apparently jealousy and a controlling nature. And she couldn't wait to leave. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? There could be a lot of insecurity about this as well, because if he's doing this with me, he could be doing this to someone else and I don't know about it. Or, you know, she prefers to be with him because he's younger and fitter than she would be with me. And I think, you know, we talk about it doesn't matter what size or shape you are, it's the person you are. That is not true, because unless you fancy the fuck out of somebody, being honest, you are not going to get into bed with them. It's just not going to happen.
I mean,
And
unless you are doing it as a job,
the contract, yes,
you are, there has to be a certain attraction in one
benefit.
way or another.
Yeah.
You know, I don't care what anybody says, you have to be attracted to someone to,
You do.
you know, just like, you know, I hate to keep bringing up prostitutes, but it's their job.
Mm.
So whether they're attracted or not, they're going to do it.
And
But
you know,
in dating, it's a lot different.
If someone is buying you gifts and taking you out and giving you a good time, do you then feel a responsibility or a guilt to? I remember years ago, a friend of mine said that she was seeing a guy. They spent a lot of time together, go out on dinner, etc., etc. And she said one night he actually said, "Can I stay?" And she was like, "No, why?" And he was like, "Well, you know, I've done all this for you. I've taken you out for dinner and everything. You know, I thought by now." She said, "So basically, you were doing all this to get me into bed eventually." And I think, you know, there's doing and giving something because you want to, and there's doing and giving something because you're hoping to get something back out of it. And I think that goes on quite a lot. You know, I paid for dinner. I've given you this. I've spent this time with you. I've bought you this. What do I deserve back? Well, no, that unless you've got that contract saying or that understanding. And a woman I was reading about this afternoon who I find quite interesting, and I presume I'm producing her saying her name right, Hilaria Baldwin, who is married to Alec Baldwin, who was my absolute crush growing up. Like that, there wasn't a movie that I didn't have of Alec Baldwin. And I remember my ex-husband saying, "Have you been watching Alec Baldwin again?" When, you know, I had a big smile on my face. So, you know, she met Alec Baldwin. There are 26 years between them. 26. And
There's a
obviously,
lot of Hollywood
yeah,
guys that have
younger woman.
way younger women.
I mean, Alec Baldwin, I know he's had his problems and everything recently, but he was a very famous actor. He's done some brilliant movies. He's made incredibly a lot of money. He's a good-looking guy. I mean, everybody when he married Kim Basinger, they were like Hollywood hot couple. They were beautiful together. But now Hilaria, through her relationship and her marriage to Alec, and I think they've got 7 children or something like that, she's now worth 10 million pounds. 10 million.
Yeah.
So she's not done too bad out of it, being his wife.
No.
And I'm not saying that's why she married him. But at the same time, you know, Guy Ritchie, when he divorced Madonna, he got one of the most expensive settlements in history. And he says it was never about the money. Maybe it wasn't, but end of the day, he certainly got his penny's worth,
Well,
right? And you know,
I don't think that every person who marries, you know, the rich celebrity,
yeah,
is just in it for themselves. I don't believe that everyone is like that, but I
yeah,
do believe that there are too many that can play that part,
yep.
you know, just to get something for themselves.
I was going to look at Sugar Mama because interested about this as we're talking about Cher, Madonna, etc. So they're saying sugar mamas have sometimes a different motivation and a background and traits that set them apart. Sugar mamas can age range from 35 to 75, even older. There are no age limits in the sugar bowl. Typically, a sugar mama has been married and divorced, which is why she turns to alternative relationship styles in her midlife years. And she's often called a cougar for preferring a younger date, aka a sugar baby. A cougar is an older woman seeking to date younger partners. We tend to have, sugar mamas tend to have careers, families, and responsibilities that keep them busy. And because they have so much going on, they don't have time to have a romantic relationship. So they see them as a sugar connection as less as a commitment than traditional dating. And it can be an opportunity to make you feel good and reclaim your lost youth. And it gives you, you've got a young stud in your bed. You've got a young stallion in your bed who's got the six pack and just can keep you going all night. Let's look at the cougar bit. That's an interesting, because that word's been around a long time, cougar. I was called a cougar because I married, my second husband was 6 years younger than me. And
I was called one. I dated a guy that was 11 years younger than me for like 5 years.
Oh, and he told me, I was like, what? My first husband was 2 years younger, and my second husband was 6 years younger. And I was kind of like, oh God, I feel really old. And he was like, I don't care, and I think there were times in our relationship that I remember going out and seeing other women, because he is when we were married, he was a good looking man. And we'd look at him and they'd go, I would feel, what's he doing with her? Right? What's he doing with her?
So did you tend to be more jealous?
Insecure.
From the younger.
It was insecurity, but it wasn't helped that he was also unfaithful, in a very different manner, but he was unfaithful. Yeah. And, I think I was quite insecure, and it kind of got in my head. And I wondered, that probably would have happened with any guy, regardless of his age. But being the fact that he was younger, probably had that point.
I think that when you date someone younger, I think you tend to be more jealous or more insecure, because in our eyes, the younger girls, the younger women, in our eyes, look so much better than we do. Why are they with me? What's their alternative, ulterior motive? Because they could be with them. Why are they, I think a lot of that goes through our head instead of, okay, they like being with me. Period.
I mean, also, if you think about it, using the term cougar, sugar mama, or whatever, you have reached a point in your life where you've been there, done it, ticked it off. Your home is lovely if you've got it the way you want it. You wake up in the morning, it's exactly, unless you have a dog. But you actually wake up in the morning and everything's where you want it to be. You haven't got someone snoring and scratching beside you. You've just got someone that's going to come in. You're going to have a nice evening and then see you later. Like, see you tomorrow, or whatever.
Right.
Most sugar mamas tend to be quite confident and independent women, that don't take any shit. And also like to have control. Because
I was getting ready to say they kind of call the shots.
They want to be the dominant ones. They want to be untethered.
Yeah.
They don't want to be tied down. They don't want, why have just one person when, I'm free? Because what's happened is we've got older. I mean, certainly not in our parents' probably generation, but certainly in our generations, I think society judges older women for being cougars with these great sexual appetites who can't get pregnant anymore, and we want to just have great sex and have good fun. But it's also about, as you say, companionship with a younger person who makes it easy to talk to and won't make demands on you.
Right. Yeah. I think a lot of times for men and women, the younger person kind of likes being with the older person because they don't demand so much from them, as their own age. And they can sit down and have a normal conversation without, I know some of the younger girls are kind of ditzy and they don't have a clue what the men are talking about. And the same with women also. But I think when you find someone that you can actually sit down and talk to, I think that's one of the big attractions.
Yes.
Because they do want someone that's not demanding anything from them to just be a companion.
I'm interested to carry on with sugar mamas, and I am going to do the sugar daddies, and I'll bring in the male version of experience to talk to us about that. But I think also as well, women our age, sort of mid to late 40s upwards, they also want to have a guy who's going to be, as you say, fun, exciting.
Yeah.
Is going to give their time and attention to you, is not on the phone doing this, that, and the other. They want to feel like I've got their attention. They want to feel like a goddess. They want to feel like this
Right.
sexual, and if you've got the phone keep going, or they're into doing other things, like everything in life, that's why I can see in that short period of time that you are together, you want it to be worthwhile. You want to actually say,
Sure.
I had a really great night last night, feel amazing. Not sure I want to bring him to the office party, but also it will boost your confidence having a young whippersnapper.
Yeah. I started to say, if you have a young, good-looking man showering you with affection and attention, that's going to make you feel like $100. It's
so young.
It's kind of an ego thing, an ego boost.
Because you're thinking, oh my God, cellulite, wobbly bits, carrying a bit of weight, my boobs are just
Gravity
going
suck.
Is he really getting menopausal? And you meet these guys and they're kind of like, yeah, this is sexy. This is cool.
Yeah.
And you're like, really? So I do understand very much why the younger guys are going for the sugar mamas, but because with all things, there's that emotional complication of falling in love.
Yeah.
Having insecurity.
And like I said, if one falls, the other one doesn't. Bad things can come out of it.
I mean, I'm going to go bring into sugar daddies now and bring Michael in, but it's like looking at Leonardo DiCaprio. Has that man actually had a woman over the age of 35? I don't think he has.
I don't think so.
And he seems to go from one to the other. And some people might say, I want a good woman who's got money, she's mature, she's charming. So when I actually see these guys on the dating site, I saw some earlier on, and there was a younger guy, he put up that he was 48. You could actually tell that he was, I don't know, 20s. And he was like, and I felt like saying to him, what is it you're looking for? But having said that, also from a financial point of view, you don't want to be in a situation where you feel you've got to pay. You have to pay. It's expected for you to pay because you're the older one and you've got the money.
Yeah,
right?
I think sides really have to weigh their options as far as going into a relationship such as that.
Also, women and men in this, we can be seen, and using we as in older, we can be seen as predators and seeking out prey and very much judged for it. And I can see why, because social media certainly brings them down.
But don't you feel like women are kind of judged more harshly than men in those circumstances?
Yes, I think we are. Absolutely. I think there's a lot.
I think a lot of times it's looked at purely like you want a young guy as far as sex. That's what everybody thinks. The whole relationship is just because of sex.
Mm-hmm.
When it's not. necessarily. That may be a part of it, but, women want companionship the same as men do.
Yeah.
It's not all about, I think on either side, it's not all about sex.
I think we all want to walk into that room with a very good looking partner. And I don't mean that
horribly, who actually wants to be there.
Who actually is happy to be with you. But and other women want, or other men want, right? And I think that's a very human thing. You want someone that they're gonna say, oh my God, he's gorgeous. Where did you get him from? Or she's gorgeous. And I think when we let ourselves go sometimes for whatever, we have very low confidence and we think, who's going to want us? Who's going to find us attractive? Well, that's when we have to turn ourselves around and go, we have to feel good for ourselves. We have to look good for ourselves, and anything else is a bonus. Lose weight, get your hair done,
Well, I think that's one reason that we can't necessarily understand why these young people are calling us, sexy and wanting to be with us, because we don't see ourselves that way. We see all the gravity and the, all the stuff that really sucks with age, and we don't really understand why they find that attractive.
I also think nobody likes power dynamics in a relationship where you're struggling for power and I'm right, you're right, etc., etc. It cuts out a lot of things. But I remember when I was living in Calgary and when my ex-husband worked, there was a lot of rich women going in there with their husbands who weren't paying them any attention whatsoever. And here was this gorgeous looking waiter or waiters who were, and they were giving their number. They were, call me, because they're looking for that excitement. And what a better excitement than to go with someone who can make you feel good. Husband makes you feel like crap. He's probably got another woman. He's probably a sugar daddy to someone else. So I can see the dynamics. Let's bring
someone who pays attention to you.
Yeah. You've been listening back the scenes, Michael. Before we go on to sugar daddies, what do you think about sugar mamas?
I've took a lot more notes here than what I took. The famous one, like I put in the comments, I'd never heard of her, but undoubtedly she's made it a career. Her name was
Nina Peterson.
Yeah, her. Yeah, and when you Google it, her name pops up like famous sugar babies.
Yeah.
But you was talking about the people in the music industry. Back in the day, Dolly was married to Porter Wagner. Much, much older man. More rhinestones than anybody should wear on an outfit. Gaudy. And the reason she did it was she could not get a step up in the music career without basically paying to play. And that's another thing. It's all about paying to play. And there's a famous quote the guy that run the bunny ranch said, if you go to get a cut of meat, you go to a professional butcher. He said, if I want to take a good shagging, I'm going to a professional. And a lot of times, when I was a younger man, that seems like many, many lifetimes ago, I dated older women. I wanted to know what the secrets was, and they would teach you.
Well, do you, going by what you're saying, do you consider the sugar dating as kind of prostitution?
Absolutely.
As a sort of.
Yeah, there's the running joke, and I said this before, your job, your spouse, anything, especially in the Army. I used to tell them, hey, we're all whores. They give you X amount of dollars per month for use of your body. Same thing. It's a job. I don't know why that's so taboo. It's the oldest profession in the world. They've got
So you think it's prostitution by another name?
Yeah, it's just legalized.
Yeah.
It's the same way when you clean up any kind of words in life. It started out as being shell-shocked, battle fatigued, and now you soften it up so much. Now they say, oh, you just have a TBI or PTSD. It don't have, it's just a softening of the word. Because if she's like, hey, I'm renting my use of my body to older men for companionship or older women for, it goes both ways.
Michael, why did you go with older women?
I think I've told you this. Well, like I said, one is experience. They had money. They would share you with gifts. And I grew up, like I said, a
Why do you
portion.
think they showered you with gifts?
You hit it. Like you said, every woman wants a young stud in their bed. They might not know what, and I remember this now that I'm 53 years old. It's I remember, and I'll say her name. She's probably dead now because she's my mom's age. Her name was Debbie. Debbie made me a man, and I was like, everybody's like, oh, I can't believe it. I was like, she drives a new Camaro. She has money. She didn't have time to be a wife to somebody else, but she wanted a younger man that was over 6 feet tall on her arm. Big, strong, strapping farm boy was what she was looking for. And I didn't see nothing wrong with it. She was good to me. Anything I wanted. I was like 19 years old. We could go to the bar. I was with her. They never once checked my ID. Never once. Then, I told her, I said, hey, I need a new pair of shoes. Okay. Right to the shoe store we went. And I'm used to living broke. And she's like, oh no, these are what's going on your feet. I never owned a pair of Nikes in my life. Like I said, and I can see what the appeal is for younger men or younger women to kind of, like I said, the experience.
Did you feel in any way that you were prostituting yourself?
I didn't care.
But did you feel in any way you were?
No, I just felt like I was having a good time. It was something
So in no way did you ever feel like a prostitute?
No. Gigolo. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. My mom used to call me the gigolo.
So when you look at that, using this, what you just told us, you were in a relationship where you both got something out of it.
Oh, absolutely.
You got taken care of, looked after,
yeah.
experience, etc.
Yeah.
And she got a young guy who she enjoyed spending time with and had a stud in her bed,
Yeah.
And I think that's the same for, what's the difference between a man and a woman then?
Nothing. And I hate a double standard. I really do. But there was another incident, like I said, I went down that road for a while because I had found my niche. I could do whatever I wanted. Then there was another lady, I ain't gonna say her name, she still might be alive, and she was fucking crazy. I could see the crazy coming out, so I'm like, I need to break contact here. This is not going to end, and that's what I wrote down here. You got to be able to see the red flags, because if somebody does get over possessive, you can't have no friends. You're basically a captive in their house, and you're there at their beck and call. That is not consensual.
Well, no, that's what I was saying. You have to be careful because it can go bad quick.
And the other day when I was talking to Wendy about this, and I think I had sent it to you. The first thing at the top of it, when you like Google sugar baby or whatever, cub cougar relationship, says safety first. Because this woman actually showed up to a friend's house with a loaded 380, and she had 2 names written on 2 bullets. One was mine and the other one was hers. And I thought, oh, hell, I can handle, what's this old woman going to do? That bitch is going to shoot me because I was not going to be with her. And I'm thinking, but like I said, there's the danger that goes both ways. My grandpa used to say, older.
About the 30-year-old. About the 30-year-old,
Yeah.
What was that, Michael? What did your grandfather
What did your grandfather say?
He used to say, the older the woman, the more the crazy hit cured.
Oh, it's an interesting combo.
Because, like I said, I tell a lot of my grandpa stories. My grandfather was an old coal miner, very blunt. He lived his father in the mountains in what Mirror Valley does. He actually went to prison for moonshine. He was a rough old man. And I tell him, he'd see me with these older women and he'd be like, I don't know, boy. Crazy cures with time. I'm like, oh, okay, sure, sure, but I was young, like I said, the frontal lobe hadn't fully developed to see the road I was traveling. That old man had been there.
Did you also date a younger woman?
Oh yeah,
And what was the attraction for you in that one?
Perky breast, no miles, and and it goes from like the student becoming the teacher. And you know, people don't want to talk about that. A lot of things these older women taught me made me a very dangerous young man to younger women because I knew the game. They taught it to me. And I tell, well, my son's that, and I tell, you know, other young men around me, if you think you know something, date an older woman at your age. They will tear you inside out. You better bring your A game or they're going to laugh at you. They're going to hurt your feelings. And I tell younger women, there's a younger woman out at the store that I stop at. She's always talking shit to these older men. And I told her, I said, honey, I said, unless you got your A game, leave them alone. That is not how you want to start. Because, you know, they have no conscience when it comes, you know, they're going to use you for what they can because you don't have a clue on what the hell you're doing. And like I said, you got to come into it with a mindset, like you said, save your money because you could be replaced or traded up at any time. Somebody could, you know, or you know, like young men, they could be somebody with, you know, bigger pecs, better six pack,
Well,
bigger appendage. You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, and you know, and an older woman knows what they want. And if you quit providing what she wants, you know, and what's the old meme? I've never been attacked by a bear, but I've choked a few cougars in my day. Yeah, I can't even speak right now. It's like, and, you know, and talking about the cubs. What, you know, if an older woman picks up a man, they're considered a cub. What is the female equivalency of a cub? You know what I'm saying? A fawn, a doe. You know, I've always wondered that. And you know, my last, you know,
don't you think that a lot of the sugar babies, male or female, kind of go into it wanting to propel themselves in their careers?
Oh yeah,
or
step up.
You know, that step up. I know
Yeah.
Coco Chanel was a sugar baby. She never married. She apparently got her first sugar daddy at 20, and he helped her, you know, launch her perfume, handbag, all that career.
Oh yeah.
And from then on, she never got married. She had sugar daddies and then sugar babies.
Well, you know, she figured out the cheat code.
You know, she was able to use that as a stepping point and then form this huge career for herself.
Like I said, you got to cash in why you still have the looks,
you know,
and you're desirable.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of it sounds bad to say that, you know, she used them as that stepping stone, but
I don't think the men in her bed
I also feel that they didn't get nothing out of it.
Oh no.
You know, so it kind of benefited both sides.
That's what I'm saying. Pay to play.
So
and they're
you
paying
know,
to play.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not necessarily just for gifts and, you know, the sexual side of it. I think a lot of women and men go into it hoping to further their careers or, you know, have that jumping off point.
What's the old saying, Valerie? Sex sells.
Well, it does.
And I wrote something down here, you know, because you used to hear a lot more of the cougars, especially when, you know, like I said, when I was 17, 18, 19 years old. That was before the blue pill came out, the little wonder drug that makes every 60-year-old man a stud. And now you're starting to see a lot more of these sugar daddies coming out because their equipment function, you know, properly. You know, you don't have to wait around for it. You know, if it stays, you know, harder for more than 4 hours, they say call a doctor. No, call another sugar baby. You know, and you know that'll be their commercial.
I want to bring up an interesting point here, which I've been thinking about. In my country, in the UK, we see it quite often. A lot of men go to Thailand
Oh, I've got
and
that wrote right up here. A
Bangkok,
lot of veterans do it.
etc. And they marry young girls.
Yeah.
They marry Thai brides, and you'll see this older guy with this very young woman, and we all know that unless there might be 1 out of 10 that's genuine, most of the time it's because they need the money and to get by and etc. Or it is to come to the United Kingdom and get there. And I think there is this thing about it gives a bad impression for everybody else that meets someone and who might want to move to another country, etc., etc. But these young girls, you know, I know someone very close to me, without going into too much detail, he married a Thai girl, and on the rebound, really married her, got pregnant, had a baby. The marriage fell apart. She wanted to come here, and the marriage was over. And I think there is something about, I've never gone to Thailand, never seen it, never really sort of been on my radar. But I think I would find it hard as a woman, because what happens if I went to another version? We see and all these younger guys walking around with their older woman on their arm. You know, I mean, would we go to a place like that, Val? Would we?
It would take some thought. I would have to figure out, you know.
Don't tell KB.
I mean,
don't tell KB where this place is.
But I mean, you know, I think you would have to weigh the options as far as what it was you wanted, what you wanted to give. You know what I mean? What kind of contract you would want to have. Because I don't think you could just go into it blind. Because too many things could happen.
Let's look at about the people that go into being a sugar baby. It's not for the faint-hearted. And I want to say, you know, this is very important. There is no shame in being a sex worker. There's no shame in it. It's the oldest profession. A lot of women need to come off the streets and get rid of pimps. And if it was all legal and above board, then you would get rid of so much sex trafficking, etc., and things would be more legal. Even the government would get tax from it. I think that a lot of women,
the Netherlands actually does that, don't they? Yeah.
Like, you know, a lot of them do.
No disease, like you said, you know, you can tax it, and and the running joke here in the States is, I said, if the government could ever figure out how to tax it, we'd all be screwed, and not in a good way.
I think these girls, or these women, etc., who goes into it, think of the things that they are also, whether it's getting paid for it or companionship, they're putting up with some stuff for the sake of it, that most women might either have to put up with it because they're married, or they're just in that long-term relationship, or you know, they're putting up with it, and are they earning? Are they earning what they're getting? Because sometimes I'd say yes, they are getting it, because I think some of the stuff they go through requires a lot of tolerance and strong will to put up with it. Because I think I was reading, I've got this little statement here, and I'm going to bring this up, and this is a famous person who was a sugar baby, and she says, I can't count the amount of times I was compared to a prostitute when I told people I was a sugar baby. The real insult was not the comparison to the profession, but rather the tone of people who tried to make me feel like I was less than a human being because of how I was earning money. There's no shame in sex work. The terms to describe women who did what I was doing got in my head, and I had to set boundaries of my own before I could realize that sugaring wasn't actually entirely what I made of it. Was actually entirely what I made of it. Interesting what she said. Even though she's doing it, she's getting people judging her and calling her that name and going down that road and feeling guilty about, I'm a prostitute. And I think if you made it legal, if they made everything legal, would then you still have sugar mummies and sugar daddies? I think you would.
Absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
being a sugar mama, sure, that's totally legal.
Yeah.
Even though you could compare it to prostitution, which is illegal, it's not apparently not considered that.
Yep.
Because it is legal.
It's a loophole. You know why they haven't made it illegal? I worked in D.C. and we're staying at the Hyatt Hotel, and there's this really, really older black Nigerian guy that always parked their cars, and I'd see Congress and senators walking in and out of that hotel. Young women on their arm, and you could tell there's a high-end call girl. And I'd ask him, he was cool. I'm a blue collar guy. I roll in, they relate with me. And I'd say, oh man, damn, she's young. He's like, oh, that's her niece, or that's his niece. I said, well, shit, that ain't the one he had yesterday.
Sure,
he has lots of nieces. And that's how they look at it, and they turn a blind eye to it. And you just don't bring it up. And I'm dumb enough, I'm like, I'll call them out for what it is. It's like, good for thee, or what is it, good for me, but not for thee. And she's talking about the other countries. When I started following my VA stuff, I started getting emails. Come to Thailand, live a great life, $750 a month, 3 5-star meals a day. You have your own built-in housekeeper. It kind of reminded me of the movie, Sully Green, where the women was considered furniture. Your room comes with a built-in housekeeper, confidant, and all that, and it's $750 a month, which ain't a whole lot of money for us. But when you go into an underprivileged country, if you can spend $750 a month to stay in the hotel and eat 3 meals a day, you're considered rich or wealthy. So I see a lot of veterans, American, British, Australian guys that move to these countries because there's an abundance of very feminine, young, attractive Asian girls, and in the army, we
basically will go with any man, regardless what he looks like, and what his figure is like, because it's all about money. So basically, you could say that actually they were a prostitute or selling themselves. And I think, but in this day and age, I want to look at servitude. Do you remember Samantha Jones in Sex and the City, where she had a relationship with an older businessman, and he bought her diamonds, and she went into his house, and he had a servant and everything. She had sex with him, and everything was great until the light went on, and she saw him walk across the room naked, and his bum was almost on the floor, and she ran to her heels and ran off because she was like, I wasn't prepared for that. And I think one thing I want to read is this from this girl, and she says, as a sugar baby, I am a businesswoman. And she writes, in my experience, sugar arrangements are no different from day-to-day business deals. It is transactional on both sides as much as it is beneficial. I like the saying, what he won't do, another one will. It took living the sugar baby life for a number of years to know I don't have to settle for the bare minimum, because there's someone out there begging to go above and beyond. And it's taught me that our worth is only as much as we demand. And there's great power in being able to recognize your worth. Whilst I might have begun my journey terrified of losing my power to a sugar daddy, instead, I've gained everything from material goods to valuable business skills, and it's made me a force to be reckoned with today. I mean, that is a very positive statement, and I take my hat off to her, because I absolutely think to myself, good on you, girl. Good on you, girl. Because, you have stood in your power, and you're like, this is what I'm doing, and I make my boundaries clear, etc., etc. And I can't not disrespect her for that. I respect her.
No. I always say fake it till you make it. And if you're fine with how you make your money, how your rent is paid, how your light bill's paid, how the gas bill's paid, and you ain't got some collector come knocking on your door, and you're getting to see the world, and it's like, how can I hate it when people look down their noses at anybody else. You don't know what kind of home life she came from. You don't know, or he came from, and that might be a life changing opportunity for them to, take what, the only currency they have is their looks, their body, to do whatever. And when you look at it like that, and that's why I said, a lot of people, safety, there's a lot of predators out there, and they want to prey on the weak. But if you go into it knowing this is my worth, and even here, I don't know if Valerie has saw it, but I've seen it. The opioid epidemic here hit us horrible, really, really bad. And and we used to call them the Percocet possums. Every time Grandpa got his pills, there's like 3 young girls in the truck with him. What is it they say? The Southwest Virginia mating call. And you just and they come running because of habit and bad decisions. And we used to call them the Percocet possums because every time somebody got their prescription come out, next thing you know, here's like I said, here's this older guy, 3 or 4 young girls in the truck with him. And you know what it is, they're basically trading tit for tat. And it comes from addiction and bad habits, because there's no way, if she hadn't went down that road, that she would be with a 65-year-old man.
But there's also those women who are perfectly able to get, a normal job.
Yeah.
But decide, they're going to find a sugar daddy because it's easier.
Oh, yeah.
They get more from it than a regular job. And he could, introduce them to someone that could,
and sugar babies trade
get
up.
them into what they want to be in faster than if they tried to do it themselves. So it's not always by necessity.
No, and that's what I'm saying. And sometimes sugar babies trade up sugar daddies or sugar mamas, because if you get brought into that crowd, and this guy's making $100,000 a year, and there's some older gentleman there or older woman that's making $200,000 a year that can take you on more trips, buy you better things.
Sure.
It's almost like
it's a business.
Mercenary. Yeah, it's a business.
It's a business.
And I tell people, it's like being a mercenary in sex work. You're always looking for the better gig.
Well, I mean, it would be the same,
Yeah,
it's a promotion in your business.
That's it. If you have maintained your looks and your skill set to make either the older man or the older woman happy, they're going to brag about it to their older, to the older group, to their group of friends. It's like, oh, you cannot believe this, and this. So they're going to start looking. It's like, damn, I want some of that. And next thing you know, they're saying, hey, I can do better for you than this person. So, like you said, it is a business deal. It's a business contract.
But if you go into it with someone else, then there's nothing wrong. You know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with, okay, I'm promoting myself to,
that's it.
Someone who can give me more or give me another step up.
Yeah, that's it.
And, if it's truly that transactional business deal, then neither side is going to get hurt.
Yeah.
Neither side is going to, but, I feel like there's too many people go into it that way and then end up catching feelings and, and it ends badly.
What was the other movie? Eyes Wide Shut. And I would tell anybody, before you go into any contract, make sure you read it. Make sure you know what your obligations are, what their obligations are, and don't go into it naive. And
right.
And you see that a lot. And I don't know. Like I said, everybody has an opinion on everything anymore. I know how our country's divided. They can't agree on what color the grass is.
I want to
And-
bring in a couple of ladies that we have famous history, sugar babies. Eva Perón. She was a political activist, also first lady, spiritual leader of Argentina. She came from a very humble beginning and then became the wife of President Juan Perón. And she came from nothing, and through him became great power. If I pronounce this right, it's Mata Harari, dancer and spy, the exotic dancer and accused spy during World War I, remains a symbol of intrigue and mystique. Despite her controversial reputation and tragic fate, she has a legacy as an icon of feminine allure and the complexities of espionage, and also Marilyn Monroe. Let's bring in beautiful Marilyn Monroe. She deserved to be celebrated for her talent, because she was very good with her acting, and I think she had to play on the part of being a ditzy blonde, and what was the other lady? Jane
Fonda.
No, Jane. She had
Mansfield.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
And Marilyn was exploited by a lot of powerful men. She had a lot of relationships with older guys, powerful men, yet she remains one of the greatest icons of 20th century America.
I think that's what got her killed, was her connection.
She was with the Kennedys, wasn't
she?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to say, you got an ocean between you and them. You can't say that. Just say president and his lesser known brother. But like I said, and I always said, be careful of bedroom talk. If you're in that, and don't ask too many questions, because you could become a liability or a loose end. And when you're dealing with that side of the dark government, they don't like loose ends, and they will tie them up and say, "Oh, you took too many sleeping pills." I still think I think she knew too much on the Kennedys, because she was with RFK and JFK, and they had connections like that.
I mean, looking at Cher, she dated Val Kilmer.
Yeah.
Great looking guy, younger than her. And she dated Tom Cruise. I think she was with Tom Cruise at one point.
Sure.
God love her,
she was with Tom Cruise, and there was obviously a big age gap between them. Rob Camilletti, she was with him for quite a while. He was 22, she was 40. Richie Sambora, another age gap, and then she also she's with someone now. I think is it Alexander Edwards?
Oh, Liz Taylor. That's the one that kept popping up. Yeah, Liz Taylor. She always dated younger men, and I forget how many marriages she had, but it was like
7. She had 7. And the last one she married, he was I think he was we call it a lorry driver, a truck driver, and he literally she turned him around because he loved all that money. We have a very famous, she's famous over here. I wouldn't say that I agree with everything, but her name is Katie Price. She's a model. You might have heard her. She's
I've heard
a big, busty girl. She's had quite a few lovers and a few husbands, and she always says they want me for my money, and the moment they leave me, they sell their story and they make money from me. And I imagine she's quite difficult to be with at times, but
the beast.
I mean, at the end of the day, if you're in the public eye, you become public fodder. Unfortunately, that is the sacrifice that you have to do. And let's look at the older guys that date younger women. We've talked about Leonardo DiCaprio. There is someone that his women are getting younger.
What was that movie? He said, "No matter how old I get, the women stay the same." I can't remember the movie, but it's all right. What's his name?
Michael.
No.
Oh my God, what is his name? It'll come to me in a minute.
But yeah, that's what I always think about it.
McConaughey.
Yeah.
Matthew.
McConaughey. Yeah, Matthew. But and I look at it like this: if it works for somebody, don't be offended. and everybody, beats up on President Trump for he can't do nothing right. But his wife is a lot younger. She gave him an heir, Brandon, or Baron.
Yeah.
This dude, I told him, I said, they built Batman because he comes from all this money. His mom's a supermodel, or was a supermodel. She still looks good for her age. And I'm like, this kid, and that's what I tell people about. This woman is a very intelligent woman, but she's with an older man. One, because of his name, but she was with him before he ever decided to come down the gold escalator. But but I would consider that she was probably could be put in that category too, as being taken care of or a kept woman.
And indeed, Priscilla Presley.
Very,
very young when
from
she
the
met
time she was 14. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. People don't talk about that, and even
people make out that it was a very much like it was an unhealthy relationship. But back in the day, and I'm going to say it, we didn't care to see the birth certificates of the stars that we wanted to date and go out with. We didn't. Excuse me, before we go out, can you just show me your passport to show me how old you are?
What is it? Jerry Lee Lewis was another one.
They didn't care.
And, and everybody's like, oh, what do you think about this? I said, it happens from, no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on. So I don't know why everybody looks down their nose at everybody else. Ted Nugent. I was a huge Ted Nugent fan growing up. But his wife was actually signed into his custody when she was like 13 or 14 years old. And everybody's like, oh, man, his wife still looks good. I said, well, hell, she should. She's 25 years younger than him. And, but like I said, people always look down
a lot of
it's been,
a lot of musicians.
Oh yeah,
married way younger.
Yeah, 30 years younger. And like I said, and I know what it's for.
But they stayed together.
When I was 38, she was 22. Yeah,
let's look.
A lot of them.
Yeah,
they're not necessarily sugar daddies. They're, they may be considered that some, but
yeah,
they get married and have families and stay together for years and years and years.
I expect they're not sugar daddies because they marry them. But Rod Stewart had quite a few girlfriends. I think it was Kelly Emberg, and the lady he married was Penny something. But literally, she's younger than him. And the thing is, what I think about all these relationships we show, and we were looking back at Priscilla Presley, she has been Elvis's biggest supporter. No matter what happens between them in that relationship, she's always supported his name, and
if his name goes down,
back to obviously it was on the verge of bankruptcy when I have to take my hat off to her, because at the end of the day, people still see her that she's riding on his coattails.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, without
Priscilla Presley, Graceland wouldn't be as successful as it is now. And I'm sure Elvis or Bob or Bob Dick, whoever his name is, if they think he's still alive.
Yeah, the preacher.
I'm sure they look at it and go, well, my grandchildren, my great-great-children, they're still going to have the legacy. So I think that, looking back, there's always been, and looking at Henry VIII, he married Catherine Howard. She was supposed to be between 15 and 17, and he was like in his late 40s, not a very attractive husband. And
who was the king that married the American actress that he had to give up the throne for, because she was a lot younger than him too?
The Seventh and Wallis Simpson.
Yeah, he had to give up the throne because she had a jaded past.
I think she was slightly older than him as well. And let's look at, even today, Meghan Markle using that as an and Prince Harry. I'm not sure the age gap. I think there's a little bit of an age gap between them, but she has nothing but people say about her. She married him for this. She married him for that. And once she's got what she wants, she's going to leave. Whether it's true, whether it's not, at the end of the day, it seems to come down the line that I think women. Leah, what was that famous quote at the? I think it was the Golden Globes, and Ricky Gervais said, by the time we finish this show, Leonardo DiCaprio's girlfriend will be too old for him to date.
Yeah.
it becomes a sense, it becomes funny. Val,
Yeah.
would you date a younger guy, much younger guy?
I have. I mean, he was 11 years younger than me.
Would
But
you do it again?
sure.
She said
I
she's got
don't
the
I don't
future.
necessarily see age. It's more about the person. So
Mhm.
I don't, it depends on their personality and things like that. I don't necessarily see age.
Michael, would you date a younger woman?
Oh, yeah, I'd go younger or older. Send me a picture of the boat in the bass pond. What is it? 800 acres, 80 million in the bank. I'd
You're
be Johnny
funny.
on the damn spot. I'd be make it. What is it? Make it right, Mike.
I think
She should never have so much fun in her life. Send pictures
Wendy,
of
would you?
would I?
I
I was just thinking that's a good question.
I'm to my point in my age. Oh yeah, it would most
I'm
definitely
sort
be
of
this.
torn on the fence with that because I'm married to people younger. Not that I looked for that. Would I date someone younger?
See, for me, it's about it's about the person, not necessarily
Yes,
the age.
yes, I
Oh,
would
age is
date
just a
someone
number.
younger
That defense.
to
And when I hear that defense, when they say, "Oh, but age is just a number," I've been on both ends of the spectrum, and them relationships
So
are
have
only
I.
good for one thing, you know. And I'm like,
I've been
like
on
you
both
said,
ends of the spectrum also. So
and
I
it's
guess
like
it's all about the person. It's not
connection.
about,
Yeah,
you know.
they can't be
when you
thick.
can't pay the bills and you've got the man knocking on the door for the money and you can't pay the
Old
rent
Bill. Yeah,
and you're feeling low in confidence and someone comes along, I can't defy anyone for not taking that road because you know what, we all have to put food on the table
it's it.
and we all have to pay our bills. And yes, it
Right.
might be not the best way of doing it sometimes, but as that woman said, she's it's about standing in your power. And after all, women have been, and I mean this nicely, we have been in the shadow of men for so many years.
Yes.
And what is good for the goose is good for the gander. So if a man can do it and he's almost celebrated for having a younger woman, and look what why can't a woman? And also, why can't she be on someone's arm as the bauble if that's what she chooses to be?
Absolutely.
And
Well,
it's both of them.
honestly, the older I get, the less I care what people think of who I date, where I go, what I do. I don't care because if they're busy watching me and doing and finding things wrong with what I do, they're so not paying attention to what they need to be paying attention to is themselves. So who cares what they think?
I think that's a very good
for
point.
you, Valerie. There's a thing that I always said here. If my life is so damn interesting for these people, they need to drop the check off in the mailbox to pay me for their entertainment. And at the end of the day, you just really can't give a fuck what anybody thinks. If it's good for you, and
That's
my mom
the thing. That's the thing. You have yourself. You know what makes yourself happy. Don't worry about what everybody else thinks. Who
Tell them
cares?
to get bent.
Who cares what people think?
Yeah, my mom had a good saying. She said, if they're not feeding you financially or fucking you, tell them to fuck off. It's none of their business.
Yeah.
And I tell people all the time, your business is way the hell over there. You might as well carry your ass over there because it sure as hell ain't here.
Yeah. I must be extremely important if they're pouring all their time into watching me.
Yeah. Yes. And I tell people, do what you have, and the people who judge you the hardest are probably the same ones still struggling, and they're pissed off that their body has went to shit.
You're making it.
And nobody's offering them. And I heard something a while ago, and it takes me back to what this lovely lady told me that taught me so much growing up. He might not know what the fuck he's doing it, but he can do it 9 times a night, and he never gets tired. And the woman who was judging her for having a younger man in her bed, if somebody would knock the cobwebs out of it, she'd probably be in a better damn mood. And the same way with the women who judge the younger women with the older men, they get up, gravity's done got their nipples looking at their knees. They're like,
Hey,
well, I could have
I'm
done that.
talking about that shit.
Oh,
That's
but anyway,
that's not nice.
you know what happened to me that day? I went, well, anyway.
Gravity
When your boys
sucks. Okay.
when your boys dip the balls, you're getting old. I was going to dye my hair, and I thought, well, ain't no use. But anyway, but
I mean, gravity sucks.
Yeah, gravity is nobody's friend. Jump out of an airplane without a parachute. You'll do it once. Gravity gets us all. But the women who judge, the younger women, are mad because they don't have a big enough set of bollocks to go and do it. Well,
I think
it's like, what would Jesus think?
Gold digger is one that I've heard many times from about a woman with a guy who's got money, but I don't seem to hear that about a younger guy who's with a woman. I don't hear him being called a gold digger.
Oh, no.
And wanting something. It's like women are still persecuted and still looked down on, and we're still, we're still fighting to have that recognition. And I think if you get into a relationship, as long as it works for the both of you and you're not hurting anyone else, who the fuck does it? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Make sure
if it's mutual, if it's two adults and it's mutual, don't worry about what anybody else says, because it's none of their business.
You must have boundaries. And, at the end of the day, when it stops being fun, or you find someone younger, or
trade up.
Damn, Wendy.
Well,
hey,
as long as it works, or you find somebody.
No, Rapid Dog said, Boomhauer, when I get excited over something like that, and I get where Wendy's coming from about women being looked down on for acting like a man in a man's world. I probably do sound like Boomhauer because I get overly excited. I'm not that medicated today.
But it's true. It's women.
But it's true. And, and I've got threats. They say, like, I dare you say if a man could have 9 wives, a woman could have 9 husbands. I was like, what's fair for one is fair for the other. And it's all about fair play. And like I said, I do get overly excited because I know the comments are going to be coming and I don't give a shit.
Here's a point I just need to remember before I forget it. How many people are stuck in relationships day in, day out, no sex, miserable, no attention, money, nagged, or there might be money and the other half is spending all of it, right? They come over, she spends all my money, or he spends all my money, etc. They are staying in and they have to stay in that position for money, or they're too scared to leave, or they don't have the confidence. Doesn't it make the other side, who's actually going, I'm free, I can see who I want when I want, and I'm being taken here and I'm enjoying this, and I don't have to put up with any of that. I actually, as I said, right from the start of the show, I absolutely see that there is a very positive point about that, because I reckon right now as we speak, there are people watching or watch this and say, God, I'm at home in a relationship with someone. There's no sex, there's no attention, they're lazy, they overspend my money, or there isn't enough money. And, I think that having that freedom to be yourself, to have, and if you're not hurting anyone and you're not making anyone suffer through it, I'm coming to that point, Rapid Dog, then that to me is, as that lady said, I take out women standing in their power, whether it's with a younger guy or whether it's an older one. So thank you for that, ladies and gent, us ladies being ladies and gent. I must answer Rapid Dog. All I can tell you is what I know briefly is that Scotty had a high temperature yesterday, and they think he has an infection. They don't think it's to do with his leg, but he had to go and get some medication, and I think he's on antibiotics. I don't know how he is now, but I know he was doing a little bit better. So one of these days he will be back on the air, and he will be doing his podcast, and Robertson will return, which will be amazing because we've been gone a long time. And I think Scotty's been through the mill, and I think we all wish him well. And
absolutely.
Well, was it 2 throat surgeries? Then he had a blockage in his leg.
He's had so much bad luck.
Really bad luck.
And he's a good man, and he doesn't deserve what he's gone through. And I know it's affected him quite a lot. And just as he's turning the corner, he seems to get knocked down again. But they think he's doing a lot better, and he's almost on that corner. So fingers crossed. Val, are you doing any shows this week? Because I know you didn't do one last week because you were at the.
I was at the Bigfoot convention. It was so hot and I was so tired that I did not do one Saturday.
Yeah.
I will put a banner out when I do decide to do it. There's so much going on, around here.
Sure.
I kind of want to, I kind of wanted to let that kind of calm down as far as my floor. But I have to be ripping floor up and putting floor down. So,
no.
So, say a little prayer for that. I don't fall under the house. But
so,
I will be putting out a banner, hopefully soon.
Usual, as in KB will be on and off. Ken Ballos on Facebook, around about 2:00 English time in the afternoon. You can catch him and his shenanigans and everything he gets up to. And I have to say hello to Terry, who absolutely joined us this evening. My goodness.
Right?
He's absolutely here. What is going on in the world?
He hasn't been naughty today. Tell him he's still a naughty boy.
I think I need to earn, maybe I should be my sugar daddy. Like every time I say the word, I get paid for it.
Yeah, you should coin that phrase. Terry is naughty.
Hi, David. David Diaz from Las Vegas, who has joined us, and Professor Bauer was here as well. Field guy, been a long time. Time.
He come out of hiding.
Just some of the people I wanted to say hi to there. All being well, there may be a Wicked Women next week. There may not be. It all depends. I may be somewhere else. It all depends on. I take one day at a time. But all being well, might be here. If not, it will definitely be the week after that.
Yeah.
I hope you've enjoyed the show because it's an interesting topic.
It is, and it's very rarely talked about.
It is, and that's one of the reasons that Val and I thought it was a good subject because
it's taboo. People don't like talking about taboo stuff,
and I think a lot of women and guys are sort of scared to say, actually, I'm in that kind of situation.
Well, when people think about it, they think of one thing. They're with this older rich guy because they want money, and it's not always just about that.
No, it's about, as you say, companionship.
Yeah.
But praise indeed from Terry, who says enjoyable conversation. It's very quiet from KB today. Michael, we're still talking about
Wicked history.
Wicked history, and I know I've been incredibly busy, and I'm so busy I couldn't even do a promo this week. So it's in the early stages, but we are going to get there.
If I could get Terry and KB to do mischievous smells with me, call them like radio grandpas.
Yeah. Hey, that's not nice.
No. KB and
I think you need men.
I thought the Terry
different ages too, like younger and older and in between, because then you get a wider.
And I got Mike Whalen. He's young, and he's like, "When are you going to do it?" I was like, "When are you going to learn how to do Movie Maker so I can do the promos for it?" I thought it'd be easy. No. The poor dogs learn more curse words than I care to admit. I'm sitting
Anyone
here.
Anyone who thinks this is easy, sometimes it is easy, but sometimes it's not. It's tiring. It's a lot of work when doing the promo and doing the show. It's a lot of work, and sometimes Val and I are not great. We just can't do it. But
I'm
actually
about
copyright material too, and you got to look. And I figured that out too. And if it's copyrighted, it won't let you import it. And I'm like,
I am actually considering a YouTube channel for my epoxy. Hopefully sometime this year, next year, I will have a YouTube channel on my epoxy and my other things. So,
because under Wicked Women, we've got, I can't remember what my Wicked Diaries, which is where Val and my, if we want to, we can do little individual things and put it under Wicked Diaries. And then with Wicked Histories, obviously Wicked Women being the major one. But Val, take us out this evening. Michael, thank you for joining us. It's been fun to hear from a man's point of view. And very intriguing, some of the stuff that you've come out with tonight. Very intriguing.
Lord, like I said, but no, but before I go is, and you usually say, just be good to everybody. Don't judge people for what they're going through or what they might go through. You never know what anybody's past or their story is. And if you're going to, judge, maybe the problem is a you problem and not a them problem. And like I said, just be kind to each other. If I know that's usually what you say, but that's what I'm saying. Don't go around picking people apart when you don't know their situation.
Yeah.
And just be safe. Enjoy life. We only get it once.
Can't be good. Be careful. Val, take us out.
That's it.
Guys, come back next Sunday and see us all then. East Coast, 4 o'clock. Central, 3 o'clock. Out on the other coast, 2 o'clock. And 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock in 9 o'clock in the UK. But we will be back with Wicked Women next Sunday.
Look forward to it, guys. Have a great week, everyone. Bye, loves.